Welcome back to another Every Damn Week podcast. My name is John Kirby, and this week our topic involves emotional control, emotional resilience, emotional intelligence. How do we manage our emotions, especially if they're out of control or if we're struggling with trying to understand what our emotions are telling us? I want to start off with a personal story that I think will help you understand what led me towards working on my emotional intelligence and what I've learned from that experience by doing the steps that I'm going to share with you today. I want to say this is about 6 to 7 years ago. It was Sunday morning, and I had just gotten ready for church. I was in my suit. I was coming down the stairs, and I got down into the dining room, and I noticed something fly by my eye as I was going past the dining room and into the kitchen. And I didn't think anything of it at first. And then when I came back from the kitchen past the dining room, I saw something out this side of the eye, and it caught my attention. So I turned, and then I saw a water drip. I was like, oh. And I looked up, and there was a spot on the ceiling where there was just this tiny little hole, but there was a little water drip that had formed, and it was doing a slow drip. And I was like, oh no. So I went and got my step stool, set it up, got up there, and I decided to poke it. And as I poked it, the ceiling around it crumbled, and the ceiling past the drywall became exposed, and I had this hole up there where it had been clear that the drip had been running for a while. Now, I didn't know what was causing this. I had, a few suspicions because the master bathroom is upstairs, and I was wondering, did we run the water too long? So I went upstairs and I looked at the bathroom, and I could not find any standing water anywhere. The sinks weren't running. There was no running water anywhere. I couldn't figure it out. And so I went downstairs, and at this point, my emotions are building. I'm really starting to head into a panic. Now, to give you a kind of a picture of what my mental state is at this time, I'm struggling financially. I'm a real estate agent, and I have not been able to do well at making sales, and my income has been very low. But at the same time, all sorts of things have been breaking in the house. If I remember correctly, the washer had died. We had to buy a new clothes washer. The microwave died. Had to buy a new microwave. There were other things around the house that just it was just soaking me more and more of money. And then this. And I'm starting to freak out. I'm like, I cannot afford another repair. And as I'm sitting here looking at this, trying to determine what the source is, my wife comes downstairs, and she sees me, and she asks what's going on, and I tell her, and I'm mad, and I'm frustrated, and I'm tearing into her for no reason. And I'm also in panic mode, going, oh my goodness, this is going to cost $5,000. I don't have $5,000, let alone $500 to put towards anything else. We've just spent all our money on repairs, and I don't have anything. There's no savings, no nothing. And I literally sit down with my hands in my face, and I'm in massive anxiety and panic mode. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I spend a good 30 minutes dealing with this. Not very well, but dealing with it. And my wife is, bless her, trying to calm me down and trying to give me a perspective of what's going on, to really calm down. And she's not getting through to me. I'm in no mental state to listen to anything of a positive nature. I have just had so much negative going on in my life that I'm in bad shape. So eventually we go to church, and later in the day, I decide to reach out to a friend of mine because I don't know what to look for and I don't know what it could be. And he shows up, he comes over, turns out he looks at it and he says, it's a broken toilet. Your toilet is leaking. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, I don't know how to fix a toilet. I've never done this before. And he was kind enough to go with me over to Home Depot. We picked out a toilet, came back, and we both worked together. He did more of the work than I did. I was learning at that point. And we were able to replace the toilet, and that stopped the leak. However, still had this water issue in the ceiling, as well as a big hole in the ceiling down below. Again, he had a contracting business, and he was really nice enough to send one of his guys over about a week or two later, after it dried out, and to come over and patch the ceiling up and put the new texture up so it matched the rest of the ceiling, as well as get rid of any mold that might be there and do a little bit of that. And he did it so inexpensively for us. He knew we were in a bind, and he was so kind to do that. And I was thankful for that. But the lesson that came out of that was I can't control my emotions. I was frustrated and I was in panic mode, and I let it consume me. I let this just tear me down. And I tore into my poor wife, and I was just angry. I was yelling. I was miserable. And this is not the first time this had been happening to me. This is a lifelong struggle for me, and it got worse as I became a dad. And, kids do that to you. You end up with kids that put you in situations that make things difficult, and as a parent, you get frustrated, and if you don't manage it right, you lose it. And I definitely had trouble with my emotions. And this was, at this point, this toilet situation was the pinnacle. This was the pinnacle of my lack of emotional control. My example I had when I was a kid was my dad. My dad, who his anger, he was known for his fits of anger, and was always an angry person, especially when things didn't go his way. He got frustrated, and he would let everybody know, and he would scream and yell, and he was just unrelenting. This was the model I had, and I was repeating it to a degree. And I never knew what it meant to be in control of your emotions. A funny little anecdote I want to kind of share is when I was in high school, my friends, we like to make movies together, and we had finished one for a class, and my friend said, hey, our next one, we should do a spoof off of Star Trek. And I'm a Star Trek fan, and I still am to this day. And one of the things he suggested was, I should be Spock, mainly because I looked like him. But I look back on that situation, and I'm not Spock. I am not someone who controls his emotions. I'm more Captain Kirk, who lets his emotions dictate his actions. But in my case, I let it overwhelm me, and it puts me into a bad situation where the reactions and the actions I do take they're not reasonable. They're irrational, and I make bad decisions as a result. That was my MO. So I didn't understand what it meant to be logical or in control of my emotions. And I've now since learned some methods and ways to manage my emotions a whole lot better. And let me tell you, it has not been an overnight thing. Never was it overnight for me. I want to share with you some of the things that I've done, and a few things that I may not have done, but think it would also apply here. as ways to regulate your emotions. Now, one of the things I want to share is mindfulness and meditation. And I actually used to think meditation was just the weirdest thing in the world. Meditation? What the heck is meditation going to do for you? And I never did it. And if I ever did try it, I struggled with it. I couldn't do it. Well, when I started every damn day, meditation became part of what I did in the very beginning. I found some meditation audiobooks where in the mornings I would actually, just a 10-minute one, I'd put my headphones on so I could not hear anybody else in the house. Of course, usually I was up fairly early, so most people were asleep anyway. But I didn't want any distractions hitting. And so I ended up doing this meditation practice for a while, and it helped. I was able to clear my mind of a lot of my problems for the 10 minutes that I did it. A lot of breathing, more mindfulness, and it worked well. And I can't recommend meditation enough. And I still do it from time to time. It's not a regular thing for me anymore, but if I find myself overwhelmed and I need a break, I turn to meditation. I will do that. Another thing that I did, that this worked probably second best. The next one is going to be the best, but this one's the second best, journaling. And I've shared this before about gratitude journaling, but also emotional journaling. So I have a tendency to, when I write, I tend to write about gratitude when I'm really stressed or I have a lot going on. But it's also helpful to just simply write what you're feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. What are your feelings about that? It's also good, though, to expand on that and go, why? Why are you feeling these emotions? What is driving that? By doing this, it helps you process better and you gain insights into what your emotional patterns are. And if you find yourself journaling about the same thing over and over again, you can zero in. The gratitude journaling just shifts your mindset. It gives you a new perspective and improves your emotion. This improves your emotional resilience. If you're showing and feeling more gratitude, you're in more control of your emotions. The third thing, which is really the most important in my book, is physical exercise. Now, I've talked about how in every damn day, the physical, out of the triad of the physical, mental, and spiritual, the physical supports the mental and the spiritual. The mental and the spiritual have a lot to do with the emotional. You combine those two, and that drives your emotional. I tend to say that spiritual leans more on the emotional side, but mental controls that to a degree as well. But the physical activity part, you end up doing things like releasing endorphins. You improve your mood and you reduce your stress. When you're done, if you've had a really good workout, when you're done, you've expended some of that frustration that you have. And for me, that works really well. And I'll get into that a little more later. Part of the physical exercise is doing some deep breathing exercises. That can be very beneficial. Deep breathing actually helps quite a bit. It helps to regulate you. If you breathe, it calms you down. This kind of ties back into the meditation part, because if you're doing some breathing exercises with meditation, it tends to help. Find a good breathing exercise that will help you to calm down and relax. Another method that I've used is cognitive behavioral techniques. And I actually did this many years ago, where I would journal, I had a special journal for this, for cognitive behavior. And I would write down the negative thought I was having. And as part of the exercise, I would then write down, okay, this is my negative thought. So I would say, so-and-so said this to me, and I think they meant this. So you then have to go, and in another column, okay, you think this is the negative thought you're having. What are the possibilities that it might be that are not negative, that could be the real reasons for it? So somebody, made some gesture to me, and I took it in a negative way. There could have been another reason for that, or said something in a particular way, and I misinterpret that. There may have been another reason, or perhaps even just walking down the hall and they wouldn't say hi to me or talk to me. Take that negatively, right? That's how I would sometimes do it, where I would go, oh, they really don't want to talk to me. Well, what if they're having a bad day? What if they're not feeling well? What if they didn't want to talk to me? Does that mean they don't like me? No. But I would think negative and let that consume me. Cognitive behavioral techniques are awesome. And there are times I will catch myself doing this, and I will have to go and reset, and say, hey, what are the other possibilities here? And think about that for a moment. Something else you can do too is engage in activities that are enjoyable and meaningful to take your mind off the negative. That helps improve your mood and provide you a sense of accomplishment. Find a good hobby. For me, it's exercise. Exercise is a great hobby. I love that, and it's a tension release, and I put all my efforts in there in the morning, and I have a great day after that. Works really well. Another one, and I've sometimes used this, emotional awareness and expression. Actually, to take that back, I actually do share my emotions quite a bit. I'm a very emotional person, as I've said before, and I do find it. I find it healthy to express my feelings, and I also tend to label my emotions, so I understand what it is that I am dealing with. So if I have a really intense emotion that is really controlling me, why? What is the source of that? Label the emotion and try to determine what specifically it is. But something else that I do too is if I have feelings that I'm experiencing, I express them. Like if I'm frustrated about something, I'll share that with my wife or with a friend, something that I'm having trouble with, or something that in the relationship I'm having issues with. I will express it. Sometimes I bottle it up. This is a difficult thing to deal with because nobody wants difficult conversations. Nobody enjoys difficult conversations. And I don't. I don't enjoy difficult conversations because it just is stressful and it drains me. And it takes a lot out of me, but doesn't mean you have to have like angry discussions or the difficult discussions can be more constructive, and that takes practice. There are different methods of doing that, and I encourage you to explore that if this is something you struggle with on having those difficult conversations. But for me, expressing my feelings, that is something that I do very easily. I have no problem. I have no problem telling a friend I love you. I have no problem doing that because at that moment in time, I'm feeling it. I have no problem telling my wife or my kids I love you. I look at it this way. Words are powerful. Words have meaning. And while actions need to follow up with the words, you have to start somewhere with the words. The words, for some people, words have deep meaning. And sometimes that's all you got to do is just say it. Saying I love you goes a very long way in building connection with people. And for me, it's something, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not, but most of the time it is. When I really truly care about an individual and I suddenly just feel at that moment, I'm feeling that, I'm going to tell them I love you. I tell my boys I love them every night. I tell my girls when I can. I'll admit I'm probably not as good with my Marine son because he's tough and he's a tough guy. But sometimes I'll tell him I love him, and I do that. And I always tell my wife I love her. If I'm heading out the door, I say, I love you, heading out the door. It's something that is a practice for me. Sharing my emotions. It's a very healthy thing to do. So do it. But if you find yourself you're sharing a lot of negative emotions, which I've caught myself doing a lot, sometimes I'm doing that a lot, you need to regulate. And these are all ways to do that. Another method is professional help. Seek counseling. This was something I've used. I've gone to counseling to manage my emotions and to deal with things better. And it's very important that you do that. Counseling, again, I've said before, is not a negative thing. Do not be embarrassed. Do not feel negative. Counseling is an excellent way to get mental and emotional help to deal with how you're regulating your emotions. Building emotional resilience. This is, believe it or not, we're talking about doing that overall, but there's a way to narrow this down a bit where you can do two things. You can do self-compassion. Man, practice self-kindness. Be kind to yourself. You are your own best friend. You have to be nice to yourself. This is one thing that most of my life I have dealt with, where I'm constantly fighting a negative inner critic. And that inner critic treats me like crap. Always treats me like crap. Always tells me I'm not worth it. I'm a terrible person, or, I'm wrong. A lot of people deal with this, and we deal with enough things in our life that surround us that if the world is beating up on us, we need one person to be kind to us, and that's us. Be kind to yourself. Love yourself, because you're worth it. And that was the one thing I had to tell myself more and more often as I was coming out of my victim status and such. And every damn day helped me see that how much I love myself, how great of a person I am, how I am worth it. And so you must learn how to be kind to yourself. It also contributes to you being kind to others. So if you struggle with being kind to others, starting with yourself is a good way to get that going. Managing your stress, you want to find ways to relax and, relax the muscles, relax your mind, listen to good calming music. I sometimes will actually listen to, because my favorite music is usually listening to rock music, or maybe occasionally some R&B. I'm an 80s nut. I love 70s, 80s, and 90s music. I can't listen to today's music. It's just, mostly trash in my opinion, but that's just me. You do you, I do me. I listen to all varieties of music, but my favorite is rock and R&B. But every now and then I'll veer off and I'll listen to classical music. I'll actually put on a classical playlist from my Apple Music library and just say, hey, play me just some classical music, and it calms me down. I'll admit I'll even listen to some smooth jazz. Don't judge me. But it's whatever it takes to calm me down. And I'm a music aficionado, and I love music. Music hits my soul. It makes me react, and I have to be careful of the kind of music I do listen to, because if it is sad, depressing, and brings out the pain and the misery and like a sad love song or things like that, I can't listen to those anymore. I usually cannot, because they will drag me down into a depression. So I have to listen to more enriching music. So classical does a really good job for me. There's no words. It's just movement. And I appreciate classical music more than I ever have. I can pick up patterns, and it takes my focus off things. So it's a wonderful, wonderful way. Yeah, classical music, folks. It still works. Making healthy lifestyle choices. This is something I've struggled with all my life. And my father dealt with this. He ate emotionally. He ate to feel better emotionally. So he would choose to order in fast food. I can't tell you how many times I would go visit and the DoorDash driver would deliver the latest food that he had ordered because he can't drive. He couldn't go anywhere, so he had to have somebody deliver it to him. And usually he's ordering from a restaurant that can do delivery. And he's bringing in fried foods and Italian food and just all these various varieties of foods that are not healthy for you. He was eating because he loved the taste and it helped him feel better. And as a result, he gained so much weight he couldn't walk around anymore. And he was drugging himself with food. You have to choose nutritious food. And this is something I've done more recently, where I'm not quite doing keto like I was a month ago, but I've shifted the types of foods that I am eating to more low carb and more nutrient dense foods, things that are healthy. Do I cheat once in a while? I had my first slice of pizza in 2 months the other day. One slice of pizza in 2 months. Nothing wrong with that. Doing things like that on occasion, because I still like to enjoy things with my family. Did I gorge? No, I had one slice of pizza and I was good. Sometimes I would try like an ice cream cone. I've cut down on sugar quite a bit. So if I get sugar, my taste buds, they don't taste the same anymore. I've shifted my nutrient types where it's a lot less sugar, and when I get those things that have a lot of processed sugar in them, they don't set well in my taste buds anymore. So I enjoy the more bland, the bitter, the not sweet, the sour. I enjoy those tastes more than I used to. I've gotten used to it. So that has helped me eat better. Another healthy lifestyle choice is adequate sleep. And I'll admit I struggle with this. And it's not that I'm going to bed stressed, but I struggle with timing sometimes and getting enough sleep. And since I've shifted my workouts recently, I've struggled with this to make sure I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep at night. I prefer 8, but that's hard with my schedule and the way things go. I mean, as a dad, this is part of balancing. I understand how, as a dad, you have to balance being there for your kids, for your wife, for your friends, for yourself. You balance and prioritize what you have to, and sometimes there are things that get sacrificed, and every now and then I have to sacrifice sleep. And it's not a good idea, because I have learned that as you go long periods of time without proper sleep, boy, your emotional regulation goes down the toilet. I'm talking about toilets. It's important to get adequate sleep. If you're on a up and down scale on the amount of sleep and on your timing, it's going to affect your emotions. It's going to impact your health. It's going to, if you're actually trying to do muscle growth or anything like that, it will destroy that. The sleep has to happen. So make sure you're doing that. Finally, one of the things that you can do is set boundaries. I struggled with setting boundaries up until I really learned more about how to set boundaries. And when you establish and maintain healthy boundaries with people and in your relationships, you protect your emotional well-being. I have learned, and this is one thing we all need to learn. Learn to say no. And I've started doing that more, where I say no. And I don't have to be a rude person about it. I don't have to be a jerk. But I will explain, these are my boundaries. These are outside of what I will do. And I explain that and I say no. I have my standards and I will not do X, Y, or Z. Setting boundaries it's important because it also shows your self-worth as an individual. It shows integrity. It shows that you value certain things. They're important to you, and you'll stand up for those values by setting those boundaries. So for me, I want to talk about the turning point when things really started shifting. And every damn day, as you know, The triad is a part of that, the physical health, the mental health, the spiritual health. And the key ones of these that really, really turned it around for me was physical fitness. That one was huge. It helped with everything. And it still helps to this day. When I'm not doing very well, that physical fitness, if I drop off on my physical fitness, things start to get a little questionable in my emotional state. When I bring it back and I start putting back the intensity, my emotional regulation stabilizes again. I can't tell you how important physical fitness is in all aspects of your life, folks. Especially weight training. You don't have to be a power lifter. I mean, I do heavy weight training, and I enjoy it. Am I going to be a bodybuilder? No. That at 52 years old, give me a break. That ain't happening. My brother-in-law is in his early 40s, and he's a bodybuilder, weight trainer, or weight lifter, and wins competitions. I don't want to do that. Good for him, and he's awesome. He does great with that stuff, but that's not me. I just want to be healthy, strong, and have muscle that I've never had before, and I don't want to be roided out. I want healthy levels of muscle, and by focusing on that, I'm the type of person that my emotions are so strong. They can overwhelm me quickly and send me off in a complete opposite direction that I should be going, and become very irrational and illogical. By going to the gym and putting in that weight training, I'm taking that frustration out on the weights, and I'm putting it all there. I'm leaving nothing there. I'm putting all of it out on the floor. It all goes there. By the time I walk out of the gym, I am calm, I am at peace, and I feel awesome. But it's not just weight training, it's also doing cardio and doing some stretching. I've talked about all this before. You know the drill. Do these things, and you're gonna find your emotions stabilize immensely. Journaling was the other big thing, and this was the one thing that I can't stress enough. Journal. I was going back and looking at my journal from 5 years ago today, and boy, it's a good way to go back and see how I've changed. And I have. You're not only kind of recording your own history, but it also reminds me of how far I've come. When I was researching that for this episode, I realized how powerful journaling really is. So make sure to do journaling. Put down what ifs. This is one of the things that I did in my journal. What if I did this instead? What did I think was going to happen? It helps me gain a perspective, and over time I start looking at alternatives to what I'm thinking. Again, it's part of that cognitive behavioral exercise, coming up with other what ifs. The things that I have done with meditation, by expressing my feelings, counseling, all of these other things have had an impact as well. Smaller to a degree, but they've all helped. But the only way to really know whether it works is to actually just practice and get better at it, and actually recognize your emotions as you're experiencing them and identifying them, and then using all the tools that you have at your disposal to make improvements. I want to share another story. This is another toilet story, but it has a different twist. I want to say about 2, maybe 3 years later, I now have 2 toddler boys at this point. I think I had 1 when the first toilet incident happened. I now have 2. And it's our downstairs bathroom, and I go in there, and I've got to go to the bathroom. I really got to go. But I discover the toilet water is all the way to the top, and it's not flushing. I'm like, So I go find another bathroom, do what I got to do, and then I come back down, and I I'm a little more calm now that I've relieved myself. And then I use the plunger of death. I'm just giving everything I've got to the plunger, trying to get this thing unplugged and unplugged and unplugged. It just wouldn't budge. Just wouldn't budge. And it dawned on me, because only a few days prior we had dislodged a toy from one of the other toilets, and thankfully it didn't do any damage. Well, this time something was stuck. It wasn't coming out. And it's the only bathroom we have downstairs. It's the only one. And I work downstairs. My office in the house is downstairs. And I'm working from home. So I could have done what I did before. I could have sat there on the floor and had a meltdown and lost it and just gone, another toilet? What am I doing here? But I didn't. I went back to my office, printed out a sign, stuck it on the door, and said, toilet out of order until the end of the week. It was like a Monday, or I think it was a Monday. And I had no time to go get another toilet and get it done at that time. So I just said, sorry, we're all going to use the upstairs bathrooms for a while. And that's what we did. And I turned this into a teaching experience with my oldest son. So come the Saturday, I get him. At this time, I think he's 15. And I thought about that last toilet experience and how my dad was not a guy who did any of this type of stuff. And I never had somebody teach me. So I learned from last time. My friend taught me how to change the toilet. I was like, it's pretty easy. I can do that. So I decided we were going to do it together. So we went to Home Depot. We picked out all the necessary parts. We got a new toilet. We brought it back, and together we ripped out the old toilet. And sure enough, we found that not only was there a toy shoved in and stuck, it had cracked the toilet. So we knew that what we were doing was the right thing to do, and that felt good. So we went through the whole process of swapping out the toilet, and it didn't take as long as I thought it would. And my son and I had a great experience. We learned a lot together. We didn't fight. We didn't argue. We learned, okay, do this, do that, and we actually had a bonding experience with it. So much so that we took the toilet to the dump transfer station later on that day and had the pleasure of taking it and tossing it into the ditch and watching it crack into pieces. That was so much fun. And so we had the chance to bond and learn and grow. My son learned something new on how to do things. Turns out we actually replaced that toilet again about a couple of years ago because it was a terrible toilet and it cracked. So we had to do it again, and we knew how to do it. And that was what was awesome, is we both did it, and I let my son do most of the work that time, and he did an awesome job. And got a little frustrated, but not too bad. Emotional control is so important, and by, as a dad, controlling your emotions, especially when you're teaching your child how to do something, you're setting an example. You're teaching your son or daughter, whatever it is whichever you're working with at the time, you're teaching emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, emotional control. So by working on these things yourself, you are not only improving your relationships with people, including yourself, I'll have you know, you're much happier when you're in control of your emotions, but you're also making teachable moments with your children. If you are an example of emotional resilience to your children, they're going to carry that with them, and they're going to know this is what a real father does. A real father will actually stay in control of his emotions, think logically, work through it. You gonna get frustrated? Sure. Maybe you don't get frustrated in front of your kids. Or maybe you talk it out with them and help them understand what you're feeling and what you're thinking, and then explain what the correct course is. I've done that too. Just say, I don't like this. I'm not happy with this particular situation, but you know what? It is what it is. And therefore, we're going to plow through it. Talk it out. If you don't explain to your children what it is you're feeling or thinking, they can't read your mind. They're not strong enough to be empathetic at a young age. They don't understand those emotions. It's important for you as a dad to understand them, control them, and teach them. Teach the proper emotional control. My son Jacob learned that example from me as he was a teenager, and how, as I learned it, he learned it. And he's done a pretty good job himself. And now with my younger boys and my girls too, they see it, and we all see the frustrations we all have, but we all talk it out, and we do better because we understand emotional control. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode and making it this far. You guys are awesome. And I look forward to sharing more little bits with you here and there. And I hope you took a lot from this. Please put down in the comments what you learned, or maybe share a story or share something that you've experienced with dealing with your emotions and how you've dealt with those yourself. Please, I look forward to hearing what you have to share so that we all can experience and learn together how do we improve on our emotions and how do we help as a dad be the best dad we can be and teach our kids how to do it too. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you next week.